Hey guys, the HRC here, and welcome back to F1 2020 and my team career mode. This is episode 3. We are currently in Vietnam on the Hanoi circuit, the new race, or one of 2 new races in the calendar for this year. This is actually going to be a double header of an episode. Had some issues with some footage for the next race in China, and the only footage I actually have left is the race itself. I lost practice qualifying, so that's going to be on the end of this episode. So it's a double header, Vietnam and China together in this one episode here.
Let's have your take
as we
on it.
come through to this press interview where we get to pick our rival for the first time this season, who is going to be Latifi. I feel like we were consistently beating the Williams cars, not so consistently beating out the AlphaTauris, so it made more sense for me to go with Latifi as the rival. Gives me a much better chance of obviously winning the rivalry as we get our resource points in from the practice programs. And let's move on to qualifying. Not the best qualifying for me here. I hadn't played on this track apart before going into this session or weekend on this My Team career mode. I hadn't played any gameplay at this track, so the first practice lap I did was the first lap on this track, and that's probably cost me a bit. You see a lot of errors at the end of this qualifying lap, where I didn't know the track. I'm not particularly clued up on it, and that did cost me. We ended up qualifying down in 19th place, so very, very poor really. We got out-qualified by our teammate as well, Jack Aitken. He was up in P17, so it's good to see from him. But yeah, I really was struggling to get used to this track. And as we move into the race in a second, you'll see as well, I didn't have the best of times just around here at all. It'd be interesting to see what this is like in maybe a better car, but for me personally, it wasn't the best of weekends. But we do out-qualify Latifi, so we're leading that rivalry very early on after the obviously the first qualifying weekend, but a long way to go in that yet, and a lot of time to be had there, a lot of race weekends.
Welcome along to the Vietnamese capital of Hanoi, a vibrant city built on the banks of the magnificent Red River. Today it's the backdrop for the latest round of the Formula One World Championship, with a circuit specifically designed to encourage overtaking opportunities. I think we could be in for a cracking race today. A lap of Hanoi circuit then, 3.4 miles around the Vietnamese capital. A number of the 23 corners take their inspiration from other great circuits, hopefully creating plenty of passing opportunities.
So here we go then, into the Vietnamese Grand Prix here in Hanoi. I really do struggle with starts. The first couple of corners, obviously where the cars bunch up, I struggle to keep distance and stop contact. Not big smashes where I'm losing my wing, but there is always contact in the first couple of corners, like we're seeing here. It's more like dodgems really than an F1 race. I do have a problem with that in general. So I'm not an expert at this game by any means, and obviously the AI are quite often slow in the corners and they brake quite early. So going into the first couple of corners where the cars are bunched together, I do struggle to keep my distance or pull out of the corners safely. Because when I do try and do that, I end up right at the back and everyone else still gets through. So still something I need to get used to. A lot of my race starts will look a bit bad and there'll be a lot of contact. Getting better with the rest of my racing though, and keeping the contact to a minimum. You see here, obviously we're now into P15 after that start. Little kiss on the wall there, not ideal, just checking the car for damage. That helps Ricciardo pull away a bit down the start-finish straight here. The problem I was finding in this race, and we'll see in a minute coming up here, is as we get onto the long DRS straight, my car just didn't have enough. Even times where I'd have DRS and I'd have the ERS on the overtake mode, I was struggling. You know, the cars ahead of me were pulling away, the cars behind me were catching me, and you're seeing that here. Even with DRS there, wasn't really closing Ricciardo, and that was just on the first one. Obviously, we got the longer straight to come, which is just about here now. As soon as he's come out of that section, look, he's just pulling away straight away. This straight here, it was a nightmare for me all race. I say, even with DRS, I just wasn't closing the gap to Ricciardo at all. As Kvyat tries to get round us here, managed thankfully to hold him off going into the hairpin. Another part of this track I really struggled with, could not get used to that hairpin. I was either braking too early as I did there, or I wasn't braking early enough and was running really wide or running off the track. So not a good track for me, this one. I think it's just a case of lack of practice, but there's a lot of things I was doing wrong, but it wasn't helped by this here. See again on this long straight, Ricciardo has gone here, and Kvyat is going to come round us now on our right hand side, and then on our left hand side our teammate Jack Aitken is about to appear, and he goes round as well. Get early on the brakes here because I tried to avoid contact with Aitken, couldn't quite, did give him a little tap, but nothing major. Thankfully no problems for either of us, and he's able to carry on with his race. But yeah, I just let him go because I wasn't the best on this track here. As we come round again, next lap on this straight, Grosjean and Giovinazzi are both going to come flying here. There goes Grosjean now. You see me constantly looking back at me on the straight to see where these cars are, how close, how far away. Giovinazzi now as well, so both of them get round me. Braking early again to avoid contact. But that is us down now to P19. It's just, yeah, it's that straight for me. That's what I say. If I have a powerful car, maybe at this point here, obviously with one of the lower cars on the grid, it's not ideal. As we come in here for our pit stop on lap number 6, a bit of a tight pit lane here as well. I do run the pit assist though, so I don't do much of that myself. Otherwise I'd probably struggle and maybe hit the walls a bit there. So we have a new front wing going on the car as well. There's a bit of damage to it taken. Obviously that doesn't help with our race. Puts us at the box at the back. You know, Gasly is out of the session, and we're now at the back. Only Latifi is the car ahead of us. Is 22 seconds up the road at this point here. Obviously hasn't made his stop yet, but he is a long way ahead of us at this point. So on to lap number 10 after a lot of chasing and a lot of driving down round by myself in no man's land. We do catch up to the back here of Latifi and Russell, the two Williams cars, and obviously Latifi our rival. But even these Williams cars, you know, the worst car on the grid at this point in this game, and even here I'm not particularly doing well to catch these guys down the straight. And if you're struggling to get past the Williams cars, then you're in trouble. Thankfully, the way that they were there and the way I had to brake to avoid any contact or anything actually helped me take the hairpin quite nicely. Whenever I was running into it unopposed, I just struggled to get it right. It was always nice when there was a car ahead of me, so I can judge it a little bit better. This is where we're at now. Trying to chase down the TV, possibly Russell if we can. As we move on to lap 11, and we are on this long straight again, trying to chase down Latifi, who you see again is pulling away from us. We get the DRS open, but look at the battery. There's hardly any battery left in the car because I was just burning it down these straights, and it wasn't getting anything there. We make a big dive to the inside of Latifi, very untidy, take a bit of contact, not a clean move at all. But we get the move done, nearly get into the wall. Thankfully, just about pulled away from the wall again there. Very messy in general at that point there, but we do get ahead of Latifi. We do move up into P20, and we are now trying to chase down George Russell as we move forward again. We're just trying to make our way through the field as best we can. The gap ahead, once we get, if and when we get past Russell, 6.5 second gap up to Grosjean. We're on the last lap. It's not going to happen. So, just trying everything I could to get past George Russell. And just try and make the best, the best of the race. As we come through here, you see I'm catching him through the DRS zone here. It's very slow through the chicane here, and I thought I saw an opening to the inside. He then pulled across that line, so again there's quite a bit of contact, but at this point I had nowhere to go. He's driven across my line as I'm coming to try and get through there. A lot of contact, but I do get through. Again, not the cleanest, but here we go round to the end of the race here. Sebastian Vettel with the race win as we come round the final corner and take our P19 finish.
Good day today. Let's have your take on it.
Wouldn't say it was a
Why
good
do
day,
you
but
think you weren't
okay.
as quick as your teammate today?
Because I really struggled on this track, but we've got to give him the credit. Obviously,
It was more like Dodgems than Formula
well.
One today, wasn't it?
It was more like Dodgems, but obviously I'm not going to answer that because I don't want to upset everyone and all the departments. Yeah, it wasn't clean at all. But the fact that we did manage to beat Latifi obviously helps with our rivalry there, building up an early lead on him after the first race weekend we've had with him. The acclaim levels there going up here. You can see we are onto driver level 3 now, halfway to Aiken essentially, who's on level 6. As we get the weekly bonus for no DNFs from our sponsor, which is always nice, and then 60,000 into the bank because of the deductions for the damage to my car, which isn't the best, but there we go. 1.69 million into the bank balance now, as we set up our activities between Vietnam and China. We do have this invitational event in the middle, as you can see on the left hand side. I wasn't going to do this. I find that these in previous games do get quite samey and they get boring and repetitive. But as it comes up here, you actually you'll see in a second it's $150,000 and I think it's 1,000 driver acclaim. So I couldn't really turn it down. We are going to upgrade our facilities first, as we just have a look through the upgrades that we can actually afford, which isn't many at all. But we are going to upgrade the quality control on our durability side, so that failure chances reduced on any durability upgrades, which haven't really put many of at this point here, but obviously need to upgrade the facilities anyway, so we're doing that. We also have unlocked a new sponsor for hitting the team level acclaim level 5. Now this one here, unlike the last sponsor where I wanted a realistic goal that I could hit, this one I just wanted a bit of a bigger payout. So the sponsor we have, complete 50 laps in a race weekend. It was achievable, because doing 25% races a lot of the time between me and Jack, you're going to have about 30 laps in the race itself. Obviously only running one shot qualifying is a bit of a negative to that because it's only 2 laps. But depending on practice programs, things like that, it was definitely possible to do, but it was more for the bonus that I took that one. So just going to come on here to the end of the invitational event and say there was the bonuses for doing it were it would have been silly not to do it at all. So we've just gone to the end here. Obviously we did pass the challenge, So it's $150,000 and 1,000 driver acclaim level as well, which is very helpful. But as I said, there are 2 races in this episode. So let's move forward here into China, and let's get on with the second race of this episode. So we are underway then in China. A lot of wheel spin off the start there. Didn't make up as much ground as I'd have hoped. Tried to go to the outside as everyone would be hugging the inside and try and get the inside for the left-hander at the end of it. But I ran a little bit wide, caught a bit of grass and didn't really help me out at all. We did start P17 in this race, by the way, so I lost the qualifying footage for some reason. So yeah, P17 was where we started. We only made 1 place after the start up into P16. And we take a big dive here, but Gasly he went far too aggressive essentially there, and then just cut straight across me. So he blocked me off, which wasn't helpful, and I'm dropping like a stone. And then it ended up in a lot of contact as I was trying to sort myself back out from the little tangle with Gasly previously to that, as he's fighting ahead with Giovinazzi. I've got Stroll and Perez behind me. Stroll went into me there. I get warned for the collision as I then knocked Gasly as well, and I knocked Stroll right back here. So I'm not 100% sure what happened. I was literally looking behind me because I saw the indicator showing he was close. I know there was a little bit of contact, and then all of a sudden he dropped like a stone. So I'm not 100% sure what happened. I did get a warning for it. But I just wanted to get on with my race and see what I could do here. So still P16 as we move on to lap 2. The most of my race was spent on the DRS straight on this. The hairpin at the end of it, I was taking very well. I was feeling like I was making up so much time there. Not necessarily on the straight itself, but in that hairpin. So that was good as Perez tries to get up behind us here. We managed to keep him out, thankfully, as we move on to that DRS straight now. You see there's quite a big gap to Gasly, over a second at this point here, so I'm looking to close that before the next lap, obviously when the DRS is enabled, to help us out on this straight, and then going into the hairpin at the end of it. But I say is that the hairpin itself, I felt like I was taking very well for most of it. Not this one here. Turned in too early, cut it a little bit. Again, no warning, not 100% sure why, but I did definitely cut that a bit there. Didn't really gain anything from it. As we move on to lap 3, and obviously you see here the DRS will now be enabled. So as we move on now to the next lap, as we come up to the DRS straight again, the gap is a lot closer this time, only half a second to Gasly, so we will have the DRS. You see here though, I've already used up a lot of my battery. I'm down to 3% at this point here, 1%. I've used it all up before we've even got the DRS enabled. Do open up the DRS though, but because I've used up the battery, and obviously the AI are going to be using theirs down this straight, it didn't do a lot for me, but that shows there. Look how close I get to him on that hairpin. I'd mastered that corner essentially. I don't want to sound big-headed about it or anything, but in this race particularly, I just felt like I was taking that corner very well and making up so much time in that corner. We do try here to stick with Gasly and get as close as we can. See, I'm making up a little bit of space here. I tried to see if I could maybe take a little look at him, but I wasn't close enough to make any kind of move at that point there. And you see here the gap's actually extended, so 1.4 seconds at this point here as we're on lap 5 now. So I was losing time. I've got my teammate behind me here, Jack Aitken. I let him go. I tried to let him go. I moved over thinking that he was going to maybe take the outside there, but he didn't. He tucked in behind me, and he just carried on staying where he was here. Maybe the same sort of thing. Didn't want to risk anything with the collision with a teammate. But as we come up on this DRS straight here, I was actually pitting this lap, so I see here I moved over, let Jack go through, tuck in behind him, and then let him carry on with his race as I pull into the pit lane, and I carry on obviously then from there chasing down the cars ahead. and trying to make the most of what I can in the laps that remain as we come out here ahead of the Williams, of Russell, and of Stroll as well, who were also in the pit lane. We came down now on the next lap just behind Kvyat as he came out, and I just did enough to avoid properly running into the back of him and taking off my wing. See there, I was just checking to see if there was any damage, and it probably distracted me a little bit because I did have the inside there, but couldn't get the move done. I was probably a little bit distracted by looking to see if I had any damage. And you see here again Kvyat pulling away from us at this point here, 8 tenths up, going on to this DRS straight here, but I've got a lot more battery saved up this time than I had in previous laps. Burning through that, got the DRS open, and we're making up the ground a little bit here as we obviously move into the hairpin. I swerved out there thinking maybe I could take a giant dive bomb, but I was way too far away. Thankfully realised that quick enough and just tucked back in behind him, hoping to get a look at him in this next DRS zone straight down the pit straight. Not quite close enough. You see I was gaining a little bit, tried to get around the outside here, but just ran a little bit wide, and again the same as the previous lap, almost ran into the back of him, so I had to stop and pull out of that one a bit. Again looked for the outside, but not quite enough there, not quite close enough. So it's on this back DRS straight again that we're looking to make up the time as we move on to lap number 8 here. Again, not close enough to make anything happen, but look here, the smoke coming out of Jack's car. For the second time this season, our teammate is out of the race. It's a shame, obviously, with our sponsor bonus for the no DNFs in the team. Also for Jack, who was ahead of us in the race, so was pushing on. It's a shame to see, but he is out of the session, and then my focus then just went straight back to can I get ahead of Kvyat and possibly even Gasly ahead of him. As we move on to lap 11, it was looking maybe less and less likely. The gap here still 8 tenths to Kvyat onto the DRS straight, and you see again not a lot of battery saved up for the straight itself, but we've got the DRS open. We are using what we have of the battery, and we make the dive to the inside. Not the cleanest, but we do make the dive. We do get ahead of Kvyat. I was just checking to see if there was any damage. Didn't get any warnings for any contact that time, so maybe it was cleaner than it looked. But we got ahead of Kvyat finally, and now my goal was to chase down Pierre Gasly as we move on to lap 12 of 14 here in China. Around the bend here, through the chicane, onto the straight again. See again a bit more ERS this time, but still not as much as you'd maybe like. So I had to be careful with that. I used it to get me up to the DRS zone quicker, and obviously once I got the DRS open, I could take off a bit of the DRS. But they would say big dive to the inside again. Way too early on the brakes from Gasly. We get to the inside, we make the move stick, and we are up to P15 now. And it was a case of holding on from here. Obviously, I only just got ahead of Gasly. I just wanted to keep him behind, and as you see here, we move on to the final lap of the race. He is still behind us at this point here as we come to the hairpin again off the straight, and that is going to be how this race finishes. It is a P15, as you see Charles Leclerc takes the race victory, but it's P15 for us, no points again, but it is improvement from the last race in Vietnam.
Amazing performance out there. I'm sure you're pretty happy with that. Your team must be ecstatic with how you're performing.
I wouldn't say ecstatic. Obviously, I got a very lucky podium earlier in the season, which was nice. But other than that, no points finishes.
Today,
I know we're not maybe supposed to be, but yeah, I'd say we're doing well enough. But I wouldn't say we're ecstatic with how we're doing at this point.
Well, Thanks anyway.
And obviously, again, the little question about the contact, which I'm not answering. But again, another big extension on the rivalry lead over Latifi. We are leading that quite comfortably now as we move on to the acclaim screen here. Only 128,000 through. Did say that I got the no DNFs, so Aitken must not have retired. I thought he did. It must have just been a bit of trouble that he got sorted out maybe in the pits, or maybe he limped the car around to the finish. But either way, you see, we're just doing our activities again here, assigning everything before the end of the race weekend. But we do actually have a press interview coming up
Here we
now.
are in the HQ of our newest Formula One team. We've got an awful lot to talk about, so let's jump straight in. Let's talk about your new second driver. How are they settling in? Your second driver seems to be getting much more comfortable with their car. Have you been focusing on their development? Would it be safe to say that in terms of team orders, your career comes first in your team? Well, thanks a lot for inviting us here. It's been
So a lot of those
fantastic.
questions there about how Jack's performing in the team. So obviously just giving the answers on that here. We do move back into the R&D tree here as we have over 1,000 points to spend. Keeping the work going on the aero side of the car and getting that as good as we can at this point here. And then moving in as well to the chassis facilities, we're going to upgrade the quality control on that as well to again reduce that failure rate on those. But that is going to be it for this episode, a double header. I will join you in the Netherlands for the next one.